Now let's take a look at section 2.8. In 2.8, we're going to look at what's called the difference quotient. The difference quotient is actually a formula, and it looks kind of messy. It's f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. This is your formula. You do have to memorize this because we do not give you formula sheets, and it does get used in this course, and if you continue on to calculus, you will use it heavily there at the very beginning of the course when you're talking about derivatives. Now notice you do have an h on the bottom of this, but it also says that h can't be 0. So what this means is during our problems, we're going to be told to simplify. And in order to simplify, what we need to do is we need to simplify this fraction in such a way that when we're done, we don't have an h on the bottom, which means we'll have to factor or cancel or do something so that that h doesn't remain on the denominator, my final answer, because we can't have something that can equal 0 on the denominator. That's going to be our key. So beware that we will have to simplify and make sure that the h isn't still in the denominator when, at least by itself, when we go to finalize our answer. Another thing is, this is a very complicated formula, and we're going to be plugging in lots of things, so the key is when you're plugging in things is to not make sure that you don't forget your parentheses when you're plugging in things. And we just need to take care of doing one thing at a time so we don't get overwhelmed. If you try to do everything at once, it will all fall apart. So, first thing what we're going to do is we're going to write down our formula for the difference quotient because that's what they're telling us to do. That's how you know what to do with these problems. So we'll start out by writing out our difference quotient, which is f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. And like I said, we will do this one step at a time, just to make this easy on ourselves. So let's start out with the f of x plus h. And what does this mean? That means that we want to go into our original function and plug in what's inside here, the x plus h, wherever there's an x. So in my original function here, I'm going to plug in an x plus h wherever there's an x. So our original function looks like 1 minus. Then we're going to replace that x with the x plus h. Whenever you make any substitutions, though, or swaps, we have to put parentheses around it. Another thing that we have to be careful about, this is our entire f of x plus h piece that's also getting plugged into this big formula here. It's getting plugged into this difference quotient formula. So I also want to put parentheses around that piece as well, just so I don't get confused. What isn't going to change is the fact that this is one big fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my fraction line. And what also is not going to change is that there should be an h on the denominator. And the next thing we actually had in our formula is that there's a minus sign. I need to carry that down. The next thing that we need to plug in is our actual just regular f of x function, which just means plug in the normal function, don't change anything. Well, the normal function, not changing anything, is up here at the beginning. It's the 1 minus x. So let's plug that in. So I'm going to plug in a 1 minus x. However, the f of x is an entire piece itself, so we plug something in, I need to put parentheses around that. So this first piece in green is my f of x plus h. My second piece here in blue is my f of x. They're both pieces. They both needed parentheses around each other so we don't get confused. Now we need to see and follow the order of operations to see what we need to do first, second, third, that sort of thing. One thing at a time, though. Let's see. So first thing, I'd start with my first set of parentheses and start with seeing what do I need to do first. Well, inside of my first set of parentheses, I have a minus sign out in front of a set of parentheses. So that means I'm going to need to distribute this minus sign to everything on the inside. So notice the 1 is going to stay the same. However, when I start distributing that minus sign, the negative sign times the x first will give me a negative x. Then the negative sign times the h will give me a negative h. However, I'm not done. Notice my f of x also has a minus sign out in front, so I needed to also distribute a minus sign to everything inside of there. Well, that means that the negative times the 1 will give me a negative 1. Then the negative times the negative x will give me actually a positive x. And I can't lose that this was a big fraction with an h on the bottom. We'll get there. Now the question is, can I simplify this any further before I continue? And I can. Notice I've got a negative x and a positive x. Those are both on top, so when they get added, they will just cancel out. Notice what else I have is, let's see, a 1 and a negative 1. So when those get added, those will also cancel out. Which means the only thing I really have on my entire fraction that's left over is a negative h on top and a positive h on the bottom. That's all that's actually left. So let's see what that does for us. So we've got a negative h over an h. Well, when we get to this point, that means that the h's will cancel out. However, notice I still have something here. I still have a negative. And also, what do I have once everything cancels out? Well, you got to think about it this way, is I'm taking something and dividing it by itself. So when they cancel out or disappear, we still have a hidden 1. And because of that negative sign out in front, we actually know it's going to be a negative 1. So our final answer for this whole thing is a negative 1. And as long as I don't have a solo h on the denominator by itself, I am good, and I don't. So this is completely simplified, and this is our final answer. There's a lot of algebra and a lot of careful work, because if we make one small mistake and forget a set of parentheses, things won't cancel properly, and then we wouldn't get the correct answer. So we need to be very careful with these and only do one thing at a time. Let's take a look at B. In B, let's see, we're going to start out with our difference quotient formula, which is f of x plus h minus f of x all over